Now imagine a theoretical line which has been recommended in many books and videos, and as per the database, there are more than 500 plus FIDE games as well as 950 plus lichess games goes into that direction where white's supposed to get an advantage. But the matter of fact is, with the help of modern chess engine, black can deliver a nasty punch where almost he is getting a winning advantage. Isn't that amazing? Well, that's the case here because in today's video, we are going to look at one of the most amazing counter trick in the Veresov attack from the black perspective. After d4, it doesn't matter whether you are knight to f6 or d5 player. Let's say here black plays d5 first, and after knight to c3, black indeed goes for knight to f6. Okay, we have the Veresov attack on the table with bishop to g5, and the idea is very obvious. What white wants to do is he wants to capture this knight and then hit back in the center with e4. Of course, black shouldn't allow this, and accordingly, bishop to f5 is the fitting reply, stopping e4. Now, if white captures this knight, then it doesn't matter much because black can capture with either of the pawn, and in both the case, we obtain the bishop pair. So nope, that's not the right idea. And as per the database, by far the most popular choice is f3. Again, same concept. Take this knight and then look forward for the move e4. Okay, black has to stop it once again, and he does by playing knight b to d7. Well, we have reached to the most critical position of this line, where as per any database, if you look at the most popular choice here is knight captures d5, which looks more natural in this position, not only destroying the whole black center, but the big point is, after knight captures d5, white is regaining his piece back with e4, and this is what I'm talking about. This has been suggested in almost all theoretical manuals. And yes, indeed, so far white was scoring better until the modern chess engine enters into the room and dismiss the whole line. So before I move on, guys, I like you to find a killer move here which actually refute the whole white concept. Did you find it? I hope you indeed see this nice cute move at 6. And sometimes chess is an amazing game as the small moves can create wonders. Well, black is attacking the white bishop, and accordingly white has two major choices. And amongst them, the first move, bishop to d2, which is the second most popular choice, I'm afraid is a bad one because now black has a very nice reply, namely e5. So it is very obvious that if white try to capture his piece back, then after e captures d4, white gets some horrible pawn structure on the king side, which is really undesirable. So many white players think that, okay, those two pieces are not going anywhere. I am going to take on e5 first. And although, as per the engine, knight captures e5 is black's best response, after this, I am going to recommend a straightforward move which wins on the spot. Congratulations if you see the move bishop captures e4, bam! And after this, white is almost dragged into the force variation. Now if white doesn't capture this piece, then black is a clear piece up. So let's see what happens after f captures e4. Yup, you guessed it, queen to h4 check, g3, and after queen captures e4, white has choices. If we block the check with either bishop or the knight, then we are more than happy to take this rook. But remember, if we block the check with the queen, then I do not recommend to capture the rook in the corner, as after knight to f3, black has some serious problem taking out his queen. I have lost a bad game against a FIDE master like this. So instead of this, I recommend the straightforward approach. You exchange the queen, and after bishop takes e2, you just gobble up the e5 pawn, where the end result is not only black has some superior knight sitting in the center of the table, but we are clear pawn up, and if we play accurately from here, I am definitely sure black can obtain the full point. So this is the big time problem if your opponent continue with bishop to d2. Okay, by far the most popular choice is bishop to h4, keeping that e pawn in lock and key. But amazingly enough, here the modern chess engine come up with the move which is very difficult to find out by a human. First thing first, if you look at the bishop to h4, it has now given the access to this juicy square e3, but there is a saying that a lone soldier cannot do anything, so this knight needs some support. And you will be surprised to see black's next move. Look at this guy, knight to b6, what a move! And now white has few choices, including capture either of the pieces and the best choice c3, but amongst all of them, black get a great advantage. Let's start with the most obvious one, e captures f5, by far the most popular choice. But I think after this, white is losing. Yup, you heard it right, white is losing with the following sequence. Knight to e3, attacking the queen. It doesn't matter wherever the queen goes. Let's say queen to d3. We have this nasty move. Queen captures d4. And after this, no matter however white wriggles, he cannot save the game. Well, obvious enough, if you take the queen, then after knight to c2 check, not only black is regaining the queen back, but at the end result is we are clear pawn up, and there is already ongoing pressure on the f5 pawn. So obviously queen captures d4 is a bad idea. The more accurate choice here is bishop to f2. But even after this, white is not out of the trouble. Here we can go again with this forcing sequence. Queen captures d3. White is forced to capture with the bishop in order to protect the fork on c2. And after this, yup, your guess is equal as mine. You take the g2 with a check, and after king to f1 and the move knight to f4, once again we have the scenario where we are clear pawn up. But this is even better because white has now completely fractured pawn on the king side, which altogether gives black a huge advantage. Okay, let's check out the second alternative. What happens if white take the knight? Well, after this, I recommend this straightforward approach. You take on d5 with the queen, and no matter whatever white plays, let's say bishop to d3 or c3 are most popular choices. After this, we want to castle on the queen side, And as I have highlighted over here, the simple but effective plan of campaign is you play g5 and then play the move e5, which put tremendous pressure on this d pawn, and in most of the lines we are going to munch this d pawn. Let me show you how we can achieve it by showing my one of the recent game against a 2300 Lichess rated player. Here he continued with bishop to d3. I simply exchange the bishop and then, as mentioned earlier, first g5 and after bishop to g3, obvious move e5. The d pawn is pinned, so you cannot take on e5. If you take with the bishop, then after queen takes, white is losing a piece. So my opponent come out with a strong move, queen to f5 check, and after my sneaky rook to d7, white to his horror find out that he has some huge problems. For example, if he continue with d captures e5, then queen to d2 more or less finish the white. So that's not a good choice. If you take back with the queen, then this is even worse, as after rook to e7, white loses the queen. And apart from it, white doesn't have any good choices. For example, in the game, my opponent chose the move bishop to e5, which is turned out as a big time disaster, as after the move f6, I think by force, black is winning. The bishop is pinned, so white has to take with the queen, but then there comes this forcing sequence, bishop to g7, queen to f5, rook to e8, once again threatening the queen, so my opponent wisely play knight to e2, but after bishop takes, pawn takes, rook to e5, white played queen to c2 and then resigned the game, as he can clearly see black's next move. Yup, rook to e7, and the white knight is a complete goner. Last but not least, Engine's best choice here is knight to e2. But once again, we can create the pressure on the d pawn by playing bishop to g7. And kindly note that white cannot castle here as the a2 pawn drop. And Engine's best choice here is castle on the king side. After that, we have this nice sequence, which is in fact never played in any game, but it's worth to remember. Pawn takes d4. White has to exchange the queen now. And after knight to d4, I recommend this nice sequence. Knight to e3, attacking the rook. Rook cannot go to e1 as there is a knight to c2 fork coming up. So white is forced to play rook to f2. But after bishop takes knight, pawn takes. You cannot take immediately due to bishop to e5. But black has this nice intermediate sequence. Knight to f5, attacking the bishop. Bishop to e5, and now very nice move. Rook to e8. Where the amazing part is, white would love to defend the d4 pawn, but he cannot, because if either of the rook comes on the e file, then the e5 bishop will drop. The best white can do is forget about this pawn and play something like h3. But after knight to d4, we have the same scenario. Black is a pawn up, and with some accurate play, this is definitely a good advantage for the black camp. Last but not least, Engine's top choice here is c3. But I don't think so this can create any problem for you, as white is forced to enter our comfortable territory by playing the move bishop to h7. Well, now white has to capture the piece back, and after this, if you have paid the attention to my previous line, this is pretty much similar. Yup, you capture on d5 and followed up with this very obvious sequence. Castle on queenside, play g5 and then play e5, where the end result is you get this tremendous pressure on the d-pawn, and in most of the line, black do get the pawn advantage. That's it guys. I hope with this mini lecture, now you are confident enough to play this line in the tournament practice. Remember, when your opponent continue with this theoretical move, knight captures d5, you give him this rude shock with this very cute little move h6, and after this, no matter however white plays, black is getting at least an advantageous position just within the opening stage. Well, thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment, and I will meet you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.